There, my name's Andre Robertson-Bate and I lead the selection process here at EHF. What I'm trying to do here is to give a really short, quick video which describes the Edmund Hillary Fellowship. And usually I have conversations with fellows, and usually it takes me about 20 or so minutes to describe this stuff, so I'm trying to do it in a way that's nice and concise, so we'll see how we do here today. So I'm keen to talk with you about a few things. One is, why do we do the work that we're doing? Secondly, why is New Zealand a place that's interesting to live and to do innovative things? Third, to briefly talk about what the fellowship actually involves. What does it actually look like? And then fourthly and lastly, how can you get involved? So let's start with why. So I'll just speak for myself, but also I've got a sense of this for our broader team. So why we do the work that we do is because we see that there are lots of things in the world that aren't quite right. From climate change to inequality, to lots of different things. There are a number of things going right, but a lot of things that are going wrong. So we want to do work that's helping to make a positive difference in many of those problems. And we believe in the power of entrepreneurs who are motivated to make a difference, to move the dial in lots of things that are going to be meaningful and important for the world. So secondly, let's talk about New Zealand. Why is New Zealand a place that's a great place to innovate from, and a great place that could be interesting to you? So I'll talk about it in two parts. One is why it's a great place to live, and secondly, why it's a great place to innovate. So why is it a great place to live? Well, it's a place that's clean and green. It's not 100% pure, as maybe our marketing tagline says, but it's still very green. We have our challenges, but it's still a place where there's a lot of green space and a beautiful place to live. Secondly, it's a place that's inclusive. So 9 out of 10 people who move to New Zealand say that it's met or exceeded their expectations. And a place that is welcoming of people of different backgrounds. And then in terms of why is New Zealand a place that is interesting to those who are looking to innovate and do new and different things? So one is that New Zealand's a place that's very low on corruption and very high on trust. And that just makes it quick and easy to get things done. So New Zealand actually leads the world according to the World Bank in terms of ease of doing business. And part of that is because government is quite progressive and flexible and proportional in terms of how to deal with government. It's relatively easy compared to some other countries. But also, because it's high trust, it makes it easier to get commitment and buy-in from people, easy to try out new ideas, and people are open and aware of doing things in a new way. As an entrepreneur, I've been reaching out to, prior to EHF, would reach out to different people to get feedback on different ideas, and people are happy to make the time to talk. So it's quick and easy, there's high trust, it's easy to quickly experiment with different things. And then next, because we're small, it's relatively quick and easy to do things at national scale. So for example, one of our online accounting companies, Xero, they were able to get New Zealand's banks and government and many of our small businesses connected up. And then when they go overseas, they can say, hey, look, we've got a large proportion of New Zealand's key stakeholders hooked up on our platform. Here's what we can do. So it's a place where you can quickly get critical mass, and then you can go overseas and say, hey, we've got a whole country hooked up to our product or platform or whatever it is that you're doing. And if we can do it in New Zealand, we can do it in your place that's maybe slightly larger and bigger. As well as all these things, New Zealand's a place that has great workforce, highly educated people, a place that's open towards the world in terms of trade policies, a place that's got a high degree of trust internationally. So it's a great place to start and a great place to have as a base for what you're working on. Okay, so we've talked a bit about why the team at EHF does what we do. We've talked a bit about why New Zealand's a place that's great to live and great as a place to innovate, and a place as well where a lot of tech companies come and try things out here before they do it globally. Okay, so next, I want to talk a little bit about EHF in terms of what is it actually that it looks like being part of the fellowship. What is this thing that you'd be committing to or getting involved with if you're part of the fellowship? But also about what are the benefits that you'd get as being part of the fellowship as well. So let's start with what does it actually look like. So first thing I'd say is that if you're offered a place in the fellowship, you'll be welcomed with your cohort, with other people in your cohort. Usually it's around 40 or 50 people, and we create a space where you can quickly build trust with others. And that trust is really important because those relationships that you build go on a long time after that first week when you're welcomed. That week is grounded in Te Ao Māori, so a bunch of people, EHF has actually partnered with the local tribe, or we call it here iwi, and a number of people from the local iwi will come and describe their culture and describe some of New Zealand's history and give you a lot of context that will help you do what you want to do in New Zealand. Then we provide spaces for people across cohorts to connect, and we'll do that a couple of times a year, as well as we have our New Frontiers Summits, which are a space for people in New Zealand's broader ecosystem, so people from government, corporate, startups, changemakers, investors, entrepreneurs, to come together and interact with EHF fellows, as well as for a space for EHF fellows to describe the work that they're doing, so to help quickly kind of set the scene and get themselves known in terms of the work that they're doing. So the time where we welcome fellows, connect fellows to each other, and New Frontiers, those are some key things. Beyond those, there are other things as well. So for example, in Wellington, every month there's a fellows dinner, so a space for fellows to meet up with each other, those who are based in Wellington. And in different parts of the country and different parts of the world, there are regular catch-ups of EHF fellows. Beyond that, we have ways of connecting EHF fellows together, online, for example. So there's a fellows community portal. So it's a space where you can find others who are in the same place as you, those who are working on similar projects, or those who are in the same cohort as you. And you can work specifically on different projects together as well. Beyond all these things, we have some rhythms. For example, for some cohorts, they meet monthly, or they may have accountability groups where you meet up with a small subset of people. What I'd say about the fellowship as well is maybe just what it's not as well as what it is. So it's a community of people. And what it's not is it's not an accelerator where it's maybe a really short burst for, say, a 3-month period, and then you're off and away. It's more of a longer term group that you're part of. A lot of the benefits come from what comes from connecting with other people that are in the group, and it's an interesting group because of the people in the group. So it's people who are motivated to make a positive difference. It's people who are highly capable in their fields, and people who have an interest in connecting deeply with New Zealand. So beyond the community itself, the team at EHF can help provide some support. So support in terms of you and maybe your family and venture moving to New Zealand, but also helping link you to people that would be appropriate and helpful for you in the work that you're doing. Okay, so that's a little bit about what it actually looks like being part of the fellowship. And maybe now I'll describe what are the benefits, like how does that help? So what I'd say is that it's helpful both for your work, but also helpful for you as a person and as an entrepreneur. So when I asked a bunch of EHF fellows, how are you getting benefit from the fellowship? They say things like, in terms of it helping their work, they say things like it provides connections. So people saying, oh, you should talk to XYZ, they're doing a similar thing. Collaboration, so we have EHF fellows partnering with each other on their projects. So maybe often it's at the intersection of different people's projects. Also, it helps people, linking on the connection point earlier, it helps people build talent. So, for example, people who come to New Zealand have got can help say, for example, oh, I would like a developer, who's a person that I could get, and others can assist with that. There's also a mixture of EHF fellows who are investors and entrepreneurs. So there's a bunch of investment that happens across the community as well. Obviously, it's up to investors to decide when they want to make investments, but it is happening actively across the community. Also, it's a mixture of Kiwis and internationals. And so for internationals, being able to connect with Kiwis helps build local roots and local networks here in New Zealand that much faster. And for the Kiwis, they were to build international connections through the international fellows. Okay, so that's a bit about what the fellowship involves. What I'd say is that a lot of the magic comes from fellows interacting with each other. The team at EHF provide connections to you, being welcome to New Zealand, and in terms of helping you and your family and your venture move, and some intros to people here. But a lot of the benefit is through connecting with others who are part of the fellowship. There's a high degree of trust, a high degree of people helping each other out. And we design it for people who are busy, but also there's some give in terms of people helping each other out, but also people receiving a bunch through the community as well. Next, what I'd say in terms, the next up we have, I'd like to talk with you about what's involved with applying for EHF. So going to ehf.org is a good place to start. And you can go to, if you go to ehf.org, you can find our apply button, which should be up on the top right, and then from there you can learn more about the actual mechanics of the process, and I'll touch on them. One thing that when you apply for EHF, if you're accepted, is that you're able to access the Global Impact Visa. That's one other benefit which I didn't mention just before, but I'll talk that through a little bit more in our application process in terms of what's involved with applying. Okay, so in terms of applying, so you can find our application form on our website, on our apply page. So there are a bunch of written questions there, as well as a space for you to submit a video. So we have intakes every year. So once an intake or a cohort application closes, then we move into our selection process, and usually that takes a couple of months. And on that apply page, we'll identify the dates for that. We shortlist people at different points. We look through your application and we identify who we want to have an interview with, and then we go to reference checks for those who are shortlisted for that stage as well. People don't need to provide reference checks from the start. They can do that. We will ask you later in the process if you're shortlisted for that. Then the final step in our selection process is that our independent selection panel makes the final decisions about who's offered a place. We're after a diverse cohort. We've got people from well over 30 countries who are part of it, working on many different projects. The common themes are people who are working on projects that are going to get to the heart of big problems and connect through New Zealand. So if you're offered a place in the fellowship, the next step, if you're an international, is to apply for the Global Impact Visa. And you apply to Immigration New Zealand for that. And it can take as little as maybe around a month for that to turn around, from starting your documentation through to getting approval, but it can take longer. It just depends on your circumstances. It depends on how long it will take you to get the paperwork together. And then usually, roughly 5 or so months after a cohort is selected, we will, usually 3 or 4 or 5 months, we will welcome that cohort to New Zealand. And you can find all those dates on our apply page in terms of when we'll be welcoming the cohort that you're applying for to New Zealand. I'll just mention a bit more about the visa. So the Global Impact Visa is the world's first visa based on impact. It's a very flexible visa. It doesn't require you to be in country in New Zealand for a certain number of days. It is flexible in terms of maybe you apply with a particular idea in mind and you can change that. So it doesn't tie you down to a particular project. You can invest, you can start up new ventures, you can even, it's not primarily designed for this, but it also gives you space to work for others as well. That could be helpful in some contexts for some people. Next, I'm keen to talk with you about our selection criteria. So what do we look for in people that we select? These selection criteria are on our apply page. You can find it there. But also, it's worthwhile you looking at some profiles, or I would suggest looking at some profiles of our EHF fellows. So you should be able to find that on our website. Look for fellows or look for stories of fellows, and you should be able to find profiles, and that will just give you a bit of a flavour for who we've selected so far. You can see these selection criteria on our website, but they involve people who are working on problems, working at things that are going to get to the heart of big problems. So that's the first thing. And ideally, people who are working on things that are innovative and scalable. Secondly, we're after people who can execute on their ideas. So if people are able to show the progress they've made with their current work or ventures or previous ventures they've done, that's really helpful for us. If we don't see that, then we'll look at alternative ways that we can get a sense of your potential to create significant change. And that can be through what you plan to do for your current project, previous involvements, work, or other things that you've been involved with, as well as, and potentially in some cases, your academics as well. So we try and get a sense of your potential. We select based on the person rather than the project, but we do get a sense of your potential from what you've been working on and what progress you've made with those projects. Next, we're after people who can build a meaningful connection with New Zealand. And moving to New Zealand is an obvious way to do that, but there are other ways as well. It really depends on what you're working on. The key question we ask is, does it add up for you to be able to add value to New Zealand and that you would want to connect with New Zealand deeply? We have some people who move here permanently. We have some people who spend part of their time in New Zealand and part of their time elsewhere. Now the key lens is, does it add up in terms of New Zealand? Next, we're after people who want to connect with others who are part of the fellowship. So are you someone who's going to give and receive as part of the fellowship? Are you going to be active? Are you someone who we and EHF fellows want to partner with over a long period of time? And then lastly, we're after people who are going to be great ambassadors for New Zealand and will align with our values. Once again, you can see all of these on our apply page. We don't look through all of these 5 selection criteria just to tick box yes or no. We look at it in terms of how strongly do you meet these, and we look at how they all fit together. So that is the end of this. I want to just say thank you for your time, and if you are keen to apply, you can go to ehf.org and submit an application. Thank you and have a good rest of your day.